with the innovation side of it. If we need to test something, it would normally come to Australia first. If we validate it and say, yep, guys, this is good stuff, it's given us X, Y productivity gains.
G'day and welcome to the Farms Advice podcast with your host, Jack Creswell. Whether you farm it, service it, or just love it, this podcast is for you. We'll bring you the techniques and technologies you can implement into your day straight from the leaders and innovators themselves. Spread the Farms Advice so that we can reach more farmers right across Australia. Follow us on all of your socials at Farms Advice, and let's get into this episode. G'day farmers and welcome to the CaseIH series. Very excited for this one to get away, where we dive behind the wheel of different pieces of machinery, dive into some industry insights and also some game-changing technology that's happening out in the paddock and also in the shed and your office. This week we have Pete McCann, the GM for Australia and New Zealand, who loves the brand of CaseIH and what it stands for. He's excited to see what the future of farming looks like for within Australia, but also globally. So let's get into the very first episode of this series. Well, Pete, welcome to the Farms Advice podcast. Very excited to get this series underway, working with the team at CaseIH. Very professional sort of fit out there, and great to see the team up at AgQuip also. I think that was pretty good. Haven't actually had the opportunity to see everyone before who I've spoken to, so it's great to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we've been able to catch up and give the listeners a bit of an insight.
Absolutely, and especially we're probably leading into harvest. It's been a bit of a difficult one for a fair few out there with the downpour that we've had, probably more so on the east coast, right from Queensland down to Victoria and Tasmania down the bottom there. But before we get into some agribusiness today, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did Pete McCann come from and what's your background?
I'm from a family farm out near Dubbo, about an hour out of Dubbo. Again, growing up on the farm, I got into everything like most farm kids do, driving trucks, working with livestock. I guess my parents and I had different ideas. My parents are very animal husbandry. I wasn't much of an animal person. I was more of a machinery and horsepower person, and kind of got into the broadacre side of it through auto steer, when it predominantly kind of kicked off, when it was very expensive and a little bit of the unknown, to where we had huge adoption. And then it became the norm of most growers. If you haven't got it, you probably need it, and most people have got it. So that was an interesting ride for 10 years, and then got an opportunity to work for CaseIH, just as a regional sales guy, running around looking after the northern region. So the kind of from Gundawindi all the way down to Parkes, and then slowly progressed over the last 13 years to get to the point of general manager for Australia and New Zealand. So it's been a fantastic ride. We've had some good years, some hard years, but it's all part of the challenge, really.
Yeah, beautiful. You would have seen a fair few transition there within agricultural space, and with the machinery coming through within 13 years, there's a fair few models within that. What was the sort of big pivot transition that you saw, other than the auto steer coming in for farmers?
I think controlled traffic was a huge benefit to us. I think when you look at globally, where we've got the highest adoption rate of controlled traffic, and I think our farmers are very good at making sure we get the most productivity. I think we have to. We don't have the subsidies, we don't have the government support like a lot of other countries do. So seeing the auto steer side of it with controlled traffic take off, like I always compare it back to mechanization. To have a technology be adopted that quickly over the space of really kind of 4 years, in the peak of auto steer, was just unbelievable. I actually don't even think autonomy will take off as quick as auto steer did in the future, but it definitely has its place for sure, especially with our labour shortages and other government challenges that we have currently.
Yeah, regulatory going into it as well. But For CaseIH, what are some of the key trends that you're seeing on the other side of the desk from your point of view that farmers are looking for? And you've got your controlled traffic. But what are those sort of larger value items? What's happening with those key trends?
Well, I think from a key trends point of view, it's still relying heavily back on productivity. We see the automation in our combines. Again, when I was driving a Clayson 1770, you were kind of told how to set it all up, and you went on what your boss told you. Where now we're kind of taking it back and using the data we're collecting these from machines to actually make them run better, more efficiently, more productivity. And then obviously the long-term goal is uptime, keep them moving, keep those wheels rolling.
Absolutely. And it probably transcends into another episode later down the track with CaseIH with the ability to use AFS and managing your data and seeing what we can do to increase our productivity and that efficiency rate, whether from harvest planning time as well.
Yeah, I think so. And it's definitely, I guess I've always related it back to the scorecard. I guess in the old days of yield mapping, the scorecard was at the end, where we would take that PCMCA card and put it in a desk and go, I might look at that one day. Where now we're trying to actually, harness that live data and make a change during a process or a job, whether it be recording weather data for environmental, or looking at using a protein monitor and actually saying, okay, how much N have we taken out of the soil? All right, we need to focus on this next year and get it up to the actual level of the rest of the paddock. So again, trying to make every square meter pay on a consistent basis across the farm, whichever way, shape, or form it sits in.
Yeah, I think so, especially where property prices are. I think farmers are looking to optimize every square inch of the dirt that they're currently running at the moment to put it into crop, or even if you are livestock farmers or something like that. But especially for the croppers, to improve your yield is phenomenal for each harvest.
Oh yeah, and I think over the years we've seen some fantastic increases. What we can grow off an extremely small amount of water now is phenomenal. I'd be as far enough to say that it's by far some of the strongest in the world. But as I said, we are very good at what we do in regards to maximising every drop of rain.
Yeah.
And I think we have to. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout the drought sort of periods, those drier periods, and also into the sort of La Nina impacts that we're seeing today for it. But I actually saw a video of yourself of where, and the leading statement was the day the farm changed. But what was the day that Case sort of changed from traditional to digital? Was it leading into auto steer, or is it more gathering the data to see how that we can actually manage what we're doing on farm?
At CaseIH, we know you're the ones out there tending to the earth before the day begins and long after it ends. So the least we can do is go along for the ride. Our dealers will be on call and call-outs, help bit by bit and share the grit. They'll source the parts and play their part to reduce your downtime. From sun up to tools down. It's what you do. It's what we do. It's the least CaseIH can do. To find your nearest CaseIH dealer, visit caseih.com/ANZ.
Look, our journey from, the data collection side of it, or more of the data representation, was really with the AFS yield monitors way back when. That was where we really kicked off. There was only a handful of manufacturers that were doing yield monitoring. We were very excited when we used to have on-the-run moisture. And that's pretty well grown through our DNA, through all of our products. Again, like our fallout just there in the internet, there is always connectivity issues, which is always, I think, going to plague us a little bit in Australia. But it's more about, I guess looking at the trends, machine data for me is extremely important. And I guess one thing I always try and premise in any of these interviews to a certain point is that the agronomic data is not my data. That's the dealer's data. Not dealer, the customer's data. That's his scorecard on how he's progressing. What I like to understand is how our machines are performing. How can we make a change, whether it be in future development, whether it be a phone call from a dealer to say, you have an alert where we actually come out prior to something happening and keep you moving. We work with the farmer to say, well, all right, it's harvest time. I'm stopping for a half hour to do servicing. You can come out then and change whatever you need to change. I think that data for all of our growers is especially powerful, to the point where it really cements us as being a business partner. I want to make sure that machine does not stop. I don't want to be the reason you didn't get your crop in on time. And I think the more engagement we can have between the dealer, the customer, and obviously the manufacturer, being CaseIH, I think we can actually offer those growers a fantastic service of uptime targets to say, yeah, we'll keep you going. We're using that from a parts data point of it to see what are we going through the most, and then coming back to look at warranty data, and then going back even further in regards to saying, what are our customers buying? What are they changing? How many times are they changing that bearing? We've sold a lot of those bearings. Maybe it's not a good bearing, and there's hundreds of ways we can use this data. But I guess my real premise is to the listeners is that agronomic data has got nothing to do with me. That's completely yours. That's your scorecard to work with your agronomist to make sure where you can see improvements. Let me look after the machinery. That's what we do. Yeah. We're not agronomists, nowhere near it. But what we do know is machinery and how to make it perform.
It's pretty cool for farmers to know, like, to keep them on the go, because they're running in front of storm fronts trying to get the crop off, especially. It's very time sensitive now, and the harvest period's probably gotten shorter, but it probably a little bit more stressful in terms of dealing with this current climate that we have. You can't really pick when the next storm's coming, or the forecasters can't anyway. But for that, are farmers actually keeping up with the pace of the technology changes with machinery and how it can actually improve their farm?
Oh, I think so. There's always, varying levels, but I think also that falls a lot on us, the manufacturer, and the dealer, to make sure we're educating them. It's kind of that old theory of buying a car, and 8 months down the track you work out it can do X, Y, and Z. Well, it would have been handy to know that at the point of sale. So, we've endeavoured on a very big schedule to actually get direct feedback from our customers, to understand. So we survey them multiple times at the point of purchase, after certain points in, I guess, the owning life cycle, to say, how's it going, where can we improve, and etc. So we're constantly bringing that, again, another line of data back into our business to say, okay, what are we doing well, and what are we not doing so well? And like anyone these days, I think we're all very information hungry, but also very time poor. So it's about trying to, in the old days, we could have a training school prior to harvest, but as you've said, the seasons are changing so much. We're kind of planting around seasonal changes, as opposed to saying, we always did training at this month. A lot of the times now we can't do that because someone's harvesting or someone's planting. So we've got to be flexible with not only just the platform we roll out the training, but also how do we engage the dealers as well. I want every customer to have an enjoyable experience and know the full capacity of that machine when it arrives on their farm. Because they have changed so much over, from the old 425 Steigers and stuff like that. They're very different machines now.
Yeah, I think the relationship side of it anyway, people tend to buy what that service is able to pick up on the other side of that, and what Case is doing is going a long way to helping those farmers stay on the road, stay on the crops for harvesting time, but also right the way through planting time. And also into that smaller machinery. I had a glimpse into the sugar industry with Lawrence, great episode of his coming up. But all the same sort of values are coming through in the different sectors of the industry, looking to get that
Yeah, I think.
off.
Yeah, and I definitely think so. And Lawrence is a perfect example of just, I guess, that tie back to, again, going back to our heritage with Austoff. The sugar industry in comparison to other countries is not as big, but it is very important because, again, we lead the innovation side of it. If we need to test something, it would normally come to Australia first. If we validate it and say, yep, guys, this is good stuff, it's given us X, Y productivity gains, that will then be rolled out to Brazil, to Thailand, to, into Florida. So I think Australia presents a very unique platform for all manufacturers because we demand so much of our machines, whether it be tyres, belts, bearings, fuel efficiency, etc. Our demand is very high. And we're fortunate enough to have such large areas in important places like Griffith and, in the Downs and etc., where we get those 2 crops a year. So we get a great window of hours to do testing. When North America doesn't get that, Canada not so much, and Brazil's a bit hit and miss. So I think it's important, and I've always been a big fan of validating equipment in Australia before we open it up to Australia, just from just a peace of mind standpoint.
Do you think the relationship between Case dealerships with across Canada, the US, even Europe, that they play the same sort of role, or does it change with the farming landscape as well?
No, I think they're definitely very similar. Regardless of where you go for country-wise for a CaseIH, they're all extremely passionate about the brand, and I think we do go over and above from a service point of view. And the other part of it, if you look at the alignment, from a concept side of it, we farm relatively similar to North America and Canada. But then if you look at New Zealand, it's a very European-based farming. They do a lot of ploughing and a lot of deep tillage, so it's very very similar to Europe. So there's definitely some nuances between all the regions, but I think we do have one very strong common goal in regards to giving our growers the best they can get, especially at the time they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for farmers in 22 and 2023 coming into it anyway, there will be a fair few going in harvest in 23 too, I imagine. But how are farmers actually better utilizing their equipment on farm to get the most out of it? Have you seen behind the desk there at CaseIH and what the farmers are wanting from their equipment? Has that changed over time?
Yeah, I probably don't. It has changed. I think we're getting a lot better at forward planning. We saw with COVID come in, there were definitely part shortages and etc. just from the global demand, where we actually saw a lot of our producers kind of stock up in-house as opposed to reliance on the dealer. Now, you could compare it to toilet roll in the old, a few years back, can't have enough of that.
Yep.
So there was that side of it. We always have a fantastic uptake of pre-harvest inspections, where the dealer actually goes over the machines and kind of gives them a list of what's good, bad, and ugly. So I think they're using, again, that stream of data to say, okay, what have I got here? What does the dealer need to do? And they're forward planning. And I think we're also seeing that with sales. We know it's very difficult now to walk into a dealership and buy a tractor like it was 5-6 years ago. Everyone seems to be planning so further out now. You're out into the 24s and 25s, which is a challenging thing to predict. We don't know what the seasons are going to be like. As much as the rain is definitely going to damage some crop, like from a dam storage point of view and from a profile point of view, you couldn't get any better. Maybe just not at harvest time, but when it's harvest time for someone else, it's planting for cotton. So it's it swings and roundabouts, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. And across from utilizing the equipment better, farmers will be looking at efficiencies and productivity in their time, and also getting the most value out of that machinery, keeping it on the go. But what are you doing in-house to improve that efficiency and productivity? Is it you're looking at improving the yields, if you're talking about the headers?
Yeah, it's probably improving from a machinery side of it, improving the information back to the grower, like the protein monitor that we've been putting on a lot of combines over the last couple of years, and then also really just making sure we've got, to keep those guys moving, whether it be the 2 a.m. phone or the scheduled servicing. And as I said previously, I think we're getting better at planning. We're doing that pre-work beforehand. We know harvest is coming. I probably wouldn't mind seeing it a little bit more for planting tractors. I think planting, we do a lot of work on the planting rig, but then we drop the drawbar pin and hammer it. Where it's like, well, it's probably no difference. You shouldn't be doing the same kind of prep for your planting tractor as your harvester. So, but I think guys are definitely getting better planned for sure, especially over the last couple of years. We went through some pretty rough times on the eastern side with the drought. There was a lot of machines that were very underutilized, and then it rained and they were overutilized to the point where there's so much crop, we need more, or we're gonna push it harder. With a wet harvest, well, obviously that presents a lot of different challenges, whether it's getting bogged, whether it's even to the point of just making sure if we do get bogged, towing it out properly. We've seen machines over the years where they haven't towed them out properly, and it just throws everything out of kilter. So I guess my only wish is, we know everyone's under the pump, but just take your time and do it well, and also be very safe, because we know when we're under the pump, people are rushed, accidents happen, and that's one thing we definitely don't want.
Definitely. But throughout the transition into digital for the machinery, you think that fatigue has sort of improved, keeping the driver, the operator, less fatigued with the sort of tools that they're given within the machinery?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably a hard one to put a real yes/no comment to, because it's the old days, and when I was driving a tractor, you drove the tractor and you kept awake because you had to drive. You were concentrating. Obviously there's the alarms and boundary alarms and etc. But I think we have kind of taken the pressure off a little bit. An old contractor I worked for years ago when I was 19, there was no radios in the combine. You weren't allowed to listen to the radio, you had to listen to the combine. Auto steer kind of, I think everyone got very relaxed with it, so there probably was a little bit of sleeping on the job, and we have seen some pretty horrific accidents from that. Autonomy, that's a different level, I guess. When we get to the autonomy level, the machine will actually stop, whether you're in it or not. It'll say, I'm not happy, I'm not going any further. Why? So I think we will get back to a point of probably giving people a bit more time to probably rest. I guess if we can take some of those long-houred jobs out of the rotation, or even to the point of just limiting them, having that opportunity to say, actually, no, I can spray this paddock autonomously. I may still have to sit there and view it, or I may have to be doing X or Y, but I think it will give us a little bit more time to probably work on some other things on the farm at that point. But that still is a little while away yet. So.
Absolutely. And it leads us into that question for what do you think the future looks like for CaseIH and autonomous working with tractors, and what sort of work is going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, I think at Farm Progress Show, we launched the autonomous Trident, which is our kind of a high-rise spreader, I suppose you would call it. Very focused in North America for corn production with the height. Again, I think that was a really good taste test of what we can achieve. And there are machines out in North America running at the moment. Our acquisition of Raven was a very important acquisition, to the point that it brought a lot of additional and technology into our business. I think from an Australian farming point of view, and this is excluding New Zealand at the moment, is that, our guys are very keen for it. They are, the labour shortage, whether it's McDonald's or the local hotel or the local pub or the farm, the labour's just not there at the moment. So I think that is having an impact on our timeliness to the field. It's certainly, from my point of view, a race for the manufacturers to get there first, I guess. But we also want to make sure, I guess, with having a machine of that size, the safety aspect is paramount from that point of view. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting 5 to 10 years. I would compare it to auto steer. It will be extremely interesting to see, is it big machines? Is it a fleet of small machines? That's still a question that really hasn't been answered. And I don't know if we ever will answer it, to be honest, because I think it'll be situational. If if you've got the machines and I can come to you with an add-on and say, hey, keep your current machines, we put this in and it goes, or you've got to get rid of those and buy these. There's so many different solutions, I think, that'll be on the market in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, there's what might be like the old Tesla outfit. If anyone knows about it, they're looking to use their programming in there to take those cars autonomous. So maybe farmers out there, we may already have the equipment to take it to that next level of what you're doing at Case, and also that great race that you talk about.
Yeah, well, I think, and we've seen it, with all farming's full of machines that you use for a month a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yep, I've got to have this machine. I only need it for a month. I think it's about trying to harness what we have on farm, again, because I think access-wise, that'll give a lot more producers access to this technology. We're taking small steps through CaseIH. We've got headland management now and headland turning, so we're automating all that. Yes, you're still sitting in the seat, but it's dropping gears, it's dropping the machine in at the right point, and etc. So we are, I guess, slowly bringing it in different pieces at a time. There are definitely some processes that we could make a lot better in regards to harvesting, to be able to drive one and manage another two. Yep. We've also at Farm Progress Show, they had on display the automated chaser bin, where it matches your tractor speed to make sure that we're going out to 60-foot fronts now. That front's getting awfully close to that tractor. So there's certainly some great advances coming through, and then we look at the vineyard side of it. The misting of the vines. The vines never move; they're always there, so it's a fixed point. So there's a heap of opportunity, I think, from that point of view.
Do you think autonomous goes to throw away the stigma of bigger is better when operating in the equipment, and maybe that might pull down the size of our machinery to work a couple of machines in the paddocks and let them run 24 hours in 10 years or so?
Yeah, I think it'll really come down to maintenance. Whether if it's a power unit with 4 wheels, the overall cost over, let's say, pick a number, 5 of those compared to 2 Steigers, or whichever way you were looking. I think that's what it'll that return on investment, and how well that works. I know the Swarm Farm guys are kicking some goals, which is great to see, especially in Australia, from an Australian product. And as I said, there may be ebbs and flows of what suits. We all started off with light bars and thought that was fantastic, no more foam markers, and then everyone went, well, hold on, now I don't have to touch the steering wheel anymore. And then we obviously went to RTK and went, well, hold on, we can interrow cultivate, I can sideband fertilizer. That's another productivity jump on this current equipment. So I think once our producers get a hold of it, the opportunities are literally endless from that point of view.
What would be the highest in demand for autonomous, do you think, later down the track? Planting and obviously like mid-crop spraying instead of harvesting? Or is harvesting more focused?
I'd probably say harvesting and spraying from where I sit now. I think planting, until we get smart implements, I think there's still that, there's the opportunity of blocking up. And, we've all done that before. We pick an extra gear and go, I'm pumping after the rain. We pick up some stubble and we're digging a really nice culvert straight through the paddock if we're not keeping an eye on it. So I think once we see the smart implements come where they've got blockage sensors and etc., and blockage not from a seed flow but more from an implement blockage, where the machine would stop, lift up, clear out, drop down, go again. I actually think our quickest uptake will be pretty well spreading, spraying and harvesting. Now keep in mind, with spraying we've got to be monitoring 120 foot boom or 137 or however big your boom is. Spreading's not, and this is why we went down the Trident line first with our product, is spreading we've just got to look after the machine. Harvesting I think is a huge tick box for me. Especially if you were ever, if the opportunity comes up to drive one and drone a couple, you're operating 3 combines at once with one operator. And then obviously the chaser bin side of it, we all know the chaser bin drivers usually got the busiest job out of anybody, going backwards and forwards. So yeah, I think the planting will be a little later personally, from my own opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good viewpoint of it as well. There was actually a bit of a debate last harvest about who's more important, the chaser bin driver or the header driver, and where do you see that for yourself?
Yeah, I guess you can't. You can't put a cost on a very good chaser bin driver. It was always I always used to think when you were driving the chaser bin, the days used to fly by because you were flat out, especially if you're chasing for 2 or 3 machines and it's a good drop. And also they're, negotiating power poles, the combine, the front, probably being chipped by truck drivers for not putting it in the right spot. There's it is a very stressful part of the business, I think. But yeah, it's probably hard to put on who's more important. I guess the grain's got to be taken away to keep those fronts and the combines moving.
We'll have to see coming up into this harvest this year. And hopefully you get a good crop off wherever you're listening from for this year. But what are you most excited about coming into the next 5 years for CaseIH as the brand and also working with the farmers? What gets you excited?
Oh, I guess I was fortunate enough last week to go down and have a look at the 3 Steigers we've just put into Antarctica, which was, that's been a 3-year project. The 3 500 Steigers that have been heavily modified. I always enjoy those visits because it gets me out of behind the desk and you can see where some of the hard work came from, and what it went into. But I really think, I guess being a bit of a tech nerd, from my previous days, it's all really about how we harness this data. I want to be able to get in front of a farmer and say, the data I'm collecting from that machine that's running will improve your business because I'm actually going to be in touch with you on before stuff happens, how you're operating it, how you can make it more productive, and etc. So I think that whole part of it and the autonomy is it's an exciting time to be in agriculture for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Rather than autonomous machinery, first of all, automatically sort of connecting without having to join the dots yourselves. So with AFS, you got the equipment speaking to each other and delivering that data so that you can actually take some decisions off the back of that as well.
Yeah, and I think our biggest challenge at the moment is just getting the connectivity. I think all of the manufacturers waiting around for one of the big telcos to do something is never going to happen. We pretty well have to go out and own it ourselves and try and just get our farmers more connected, and really drive that whole live wire point where we're able to feed that information back instantaneously, which was always going to be the biggest challenge. It wasn't as bad with RTK because you'd go and put a tower up and say, right, you got 10 Ks, go your hardest. But I think this is a whole different level, from that point of view. And I think even as much as we rally and get into the political side of it, I don't think we're ever going to get the kind of love that we need from the big telcos. The volume of people just aren't there, so which is a shame.
Yeah, it definitely is. But for yourself, Pete, after speaking on this episode, what would be your one piece of farms advice you'd like a farmer out there that's going into harvest for this year, or even putting in their summer crop if it's not too wet for them? What would be your one piece of farms advice?
I think just don't rush.
Yeah.
Like we see some horrendous stuff when people are rushed and under the pump. It won't be a question of how much grain the grain cart or the chaser bin drivers dropped. I think it's who doesn't get bogged for the day is going to be probably more on the eastern side. So I guess be careful. The western guys over in the west have already started, and they're going to have an absolute terror of a crop over there from all reports. But I think number one is just be safe is the biggest thing. We know farming is one of the most dangerous professions around, and when we've got a million things on our mind, we don't always think safe. So that's probably my biggest wish. Let's get through it and line up again in March to do it again.
100% paramount to the industry and also the individual operating the machine as well. But for anyone looking to contact the team or see what you get up to yourself, Pete, where can we go to search for what you're doing to lead the industry?
Yeah, probably Twitter's the best one to find me on. So yeah, I try and take a few snapshots of when I'm doing interesting stuff as opposed to sitting in front on a Teams meeting all day.
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably the best bit. And there's a fair few of the product management boys are on there as well. So it says what they do. We've never been ones to sit in the background. So yeah, no, it's definitely a good time to be in ag for sure.
100%, and I'll add those into the show notes. So if you want to add Pete on Twitter, you can and see what they get up to. As the head of ANZ for CaseIH, it's pretty exciting to see what you get up to there as GMs. Pete, thanks you very, very much for coming on to Farms Advice Podcast and for the CaseIH series.
No worries, Jack, and anytime. And good luck with harvest or planting. And yeah, be safe.
This Farms Advice episode does not stop here. Come and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and even join our Facebook group. Go to farmsadvice.com.au for more on this episode and spread the hashtag FarmsAdvice to your mates. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, that will let other farmers find us too. But until then, see you next Tuesday. In the spirit of reconciliation, the Farms Advice podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people today.